Hey guys, for this video, I want to show you the sculpting tools that I'm going to be predominantly using when I'm sculpting in Blender. And before I show you how to sculpt the tools that I use to sculpt, I want to let you know that in order for you to be able to use your tablet, so I'm assuming that you guys have your own tablet here and a stylus pen, because sculpting with a mouse is going to be super difficult. So yeah, I really suggest if you don't have your own tablet, go get one on Amazon. I think they have one as affordable as $80 or $60, and you could get a decent one for that price. Or if you really want a high quality tablet, you could get a Wacom Intuos Pro, which costs over $200, but you could always get a used one. But yeah, there's some decent ones that are really cheap that can get the job done. All right. Okay, so if you guys go to edit and you go to preferences, before you sculpt, you need to go to your input here and make sure that you have emulate 3-button mouse. Okay, that way you're going to be able to navigate with your tablet and your stylus pen. Just turn that on, and if you hold the Control and Alt and you just drag your background here, you're able to zoom in, zoom out. If you want to pan to the left, pan to the right, hold the Shift key, hold the Alt key, and just click and drag here in the background here, and you're able to pan. If you want to just kind of orbit and look around your mesh, you hold the Alt key and just drag the background here. Alright, so I'm going to show you the sculpting tools that I use for creating stuff in Blender. And I'm going to select the sphere here. I'm going to Control Tab and I'm going to go to Sculpt mode. And if I, right now I do want to go ahead and just add a little bit more resolution. So I'm going to just go to my active tool and workspace settings there, and I'm going to go to my remeshed, and right here the voxel value, the voxel size is 0.1. I'm gonna bring the value down so I have more resolution to work with, and I'm gonna click remesh. You could press also the shortcut for remesh is Control R on your keyboard. So every time you do something here and it's stretching the mesh, just press Control R and it will recalculate and it will add more topology on those areas that you stretched out. Let me just undo that. Okay, so the main brushes that I use, I'm going to talk about them, okay? So first, I want to talk about, I'm going to go from here on to the bottom. I don't use every single brush here, but I'm going to tell you what I'm actually going to be using when creating realistic characters. So if I hover my mouse over here, so it tells you what brushes these are, okay? Alright, so this one here, the draw brush, I do use it, and the reason sometimes why I use that is, let's say I am sculpting the muscles of the character and I want to volumize it, I want to add a little bit more volume to it. This is a good brush to use. So let's say I'm doing like the bicep of the character and I see that it needs to be a little bit larger. I usually crank up my brush size and just make it bigger, and I just go over it and just sculpt it and just to make it pop out some more. So this is good for adding volume to your overall shape of the anatomy. And really, most of the brushes here, I just mainly just keep it in default settings. But the things that I really do change, like I keep the cursor, fall off, stroke, all these like the same settings, but as far as the radius and the strength, this is never going to be the same. You're always going to constantly changing the strength of the brush and also the size of the brush, okay? So if you press F, you're able to change the brush size, all right? If you press Shift F, you're able to change the intensity, how much it's sculpting, how deep it's sculpting. You could change the intensity, the strength of the brush, all right? So you're never going to stick to one. You're always going to be changing those values a whole lot. And you could also change the values here, all right? You can scroll down. If you go to the work settings here, this is it. You could change a few things. I'm gonna go over some of these also when it's time for us to sculpt. And yeah, so the draw brush is good for adding volume. Draw sharp is another thing that I mainly also use. Let's say I want to make like cuts on the muscles of the character. If I'm doing his abs, I would be using the draw sharp. So if let me just bring down the brush size, press F, and then bring the brush size down. And I'm gonna also add a little bit more geometry. So if you wanna really use the draw sharp brush here, you generally wanna have more geometry here to be able to create those deep cuts, all right? So I'm gonna go to my remesh, and I could bring down the value so I could have more geometry to work with. I'm gonna press Ctrl R, so there's a little bit more geometry. So if I go here, you can see that there's like some cuts going. All right. So this is also one thing that I use a lot if I want to create wrinkles, if I want to create some cuts in the muscles. All right. You could even use this sometimes you want to add like veins on the character. But the main thing that I use for adding veins is going to be the draw brush right here. But this is also good for like really, really tiny details. All right. You could hold Control and then just paint, sculpt on it, and that allow you to sculpt and elevate the mesh. And if you just paint and just dig here without holding Control, you're able to just push in the mesh. All right. Okay, so draw sharp is really good for nice cuts and wrinkles, and if you want more definition to your muscles. And this right here, yeah, I don't use this to be honest, but I use the clay strips like a whole lot. All right, this is like the main thing that I really use when I'm adding a shape to the character face or the character's muscles. This right here, once again, I keep the settings for the stroke and the fallout. Most of the settings here is default, but I do change the radius and the strength a lot just like for most of the brush. So for the clay brush, it allows you to create like a mesh on top, like a clay, and it allows you to build it up just like how you would when you're sculpting in real life, where you take like a piece of clay and then you put it on top of that clay mesh that you're working with, and then you get another piece of clay, rub it on your hands, and then you slap it on top of that mesh that you already slapped on once, and then you just kind of like put it on top and smooth it if you need to. And also I'm gonna just go ahead and bring down the remesh here so I could have more to work with. Control R. There you go. And yeah, you can even smooth it out. If you hold the shift key on your keyboard, you could hold shift and you could able to smooth out your mesh. And yeah, when I'm using the draw sharp to make my cuts here, I always like smooth it out because I don't want to make it look, you want to make it look natural. So every time most of the time when I'm using my cut, after I make my cut, I'll hold the shift key and then just kind of smooth it out. All right, to create a nice more natural wrinkles type of thing. Okay, and when it's time for us to do like more details, like the really defined details on the face, I'm going to talk more about that. Okay, so yeah, clay strip brush. Another thing that I use is going to be, I don't really use the clay thumb, I don't use the layer. I use the Inflate Brush, so maybe if there's something that maybe I have a mesh here, right here, that gets, maybe I got a mesh here that becomes like way too thin, right? So maybe I have something there that's way too thin, and I can go to my Inflate Brush and then just make it larger. And of course, when you start to see the polygons get stretchy, you could remesh that. All right, and it's taking a while to remesh. I'm just gonna put it back to 0.0. I'm gonna put it to 0.023. All right, so that's going to be faster to remesh. So yeah, this Inflate Brush, it allows you to thicken things up. I don't use the blob, and the crease I don't. Smooth brush is going to be what allows us to smooth the mesh. And the shortcut for that is just holding the shift key and then just go ahead and smooth, paint over it. All right. So if you want to change the brush settings for this and you feel like it's smoothing too much off your mesh, you could go to the smooth brush and bring down the strength level. And yeah, like if I'm working with a really low resolution level, like in the beginning stages, I like to keep my smooth brush to a low value. That way, if I'm smoothing my low poly mesh, it's not really melting down. I'm still keeping some of that shape. So you could bring it down. So now if you smooth, even bring it down some more. So now if you smooth, you're able to smooth out the mesh, but at the same time still being able to keep the shape there. All right, and yeah, as I said, I do that in my beginning stages of my sculpting. I keep the smooth lower at a lower level, and if I start to have more and more subdivision and more details, and it's going to be harder and harder to smooth out the mesh, that's when I crank up the strength here to a higher value. And this right here, Flatten Brush, this of course allows you to flatten out the mesh. So to flatten out the mesh, I do use the Flatten Brush, but I also use the Scrape Brush. I switch between flatten and scrape to flatten things out. Especially flatten. Flatten is a really good brush because you could even make like hard surfaces here with that brush quite easily. Yeah, so I switch between those. I think most likely I use the scrape brush, but sometimes flatten also gives you the difference between flatten and scrape. The flatten if you use the flatten, it also gives you more of that smooth feel to it, so you could kind of smooth out your mesh also with the flatten brush. It's like, I think the flatten brush it feels like it's a mixture of the scrape brush and the smooth brush at the same time. It flattens and it really softens the mesh. And really, these I don't use, but the grab brush is something that I also use a lot. This here allows you to just grab the mesh and just move it, pull it out. All right. If you want to adjust the overall shape of your character or the proportion of your character quickly, you could crank up the brush size of your brush and quickly adjust the shape really easily. So I really like this brush. It's something that I constantly use. And if you want to adjust the size of your character, maybe just a little bit, maybe some small features of your character's face or a little bit of maybe the fingers, and you want to bring your brush size down to just kind of adjust it. So really how much you want to cover, how much you want to move, you have to adjust your brush size based on that. These I don't use. But masking is definitely something that we're also going to be using. So with masking, what's good about this is you can click here and you could mask a portion here and you can see the dark areas. So the dark areas here that are masked, those are going to be protected. When I say protected, that means if you go to any of your brushes here, let's say I'm going to go to my clay strip brush here and I start sculpting in this area, you can see that I'm able to sculpt everywhere that doesn't have the mask on. All right, so this can be very useful when you are sculpting the character's face or the character's body, because there might be a time when you just want to adjust the eyes of your character without having to influence any part of the nose or any part of the mouth. And this is a good brush to use. You want to mask that lower area of your face so you can just focus on and manipulate just the upper part of the face. This will allow you to do that. Okay, masking is really good. All right, and for the masking, yeah, we have that. What's good about masking, you could also smooth it out. You could hold the shift key and smooth it, and you could Alt M on your keyboard, Alt M to get rid of the mask. And let me just remesh this, Control R, because I saw that there was like a little stretching there. So if you start to see some stretching there, Control R to just redistribute the polygons so you're able to have more polygons, so you're able to sculpt on that area again. All right. But yeah, masking, really great tool. You could go here, paint, and hold the shift key and smooth it. That way you got like nice soft transition. Alt M to get rid of the mask. And also there's the box mask and the lasso mask. The box mask here allows you to just click and drag, and you're able to create and mask out a huge portion of your character. And the lasso tool allows you to draw out your mask. So there are times when you might need to do this where you're able to mask things a lot easier and faster. And box hide, so this one also, we're gonna use this a little bit. This allows you to hide a portion of your character's body, a portion of your mesh. So let's say you're doing your character's torso, right? And you're looking from the side view of your character's torso, and you just want to like adjust the chest muscles and maybe the abs of your character, and maybe the arms is like kind of getting in the way and you can't really see the obliques, the side muscles of your character. Then what you want to do is you want to use the box hide. You just click and drag and hide that part of the mesh, so you're able to see more of your character's body that you're not able to see visible before. So let's say, let me see what I'm talking. So let's say this is going to be like the character's arms. All right, of course it doesn't look like character's arm, but yeah, let's say that's what it is. And let's say you want to like, let's say it's kind of in the way, right? Let's say it's an A pose. Your character's in A pose, and you're trying to adjust like the chest muscles, and you want to adjust like the underarm and the obliques, and it's kind of hard to see and adjust this area if this thing is on the way. So what you want to do is you want to go to box hide and just kind of hide that, right? You're not going to be able to see that particular mesh, but don't worry, it's still there. It's just not visible at the moment. Yeah, you could like easily hide it, hide that mesh, and then you could sculpt your stuff. You could sculpt the obliques of your character without this getting in the way. All right, and if you want to show it back again, you just click on the background, just click. Yeah, just make sure that you are back on that brush again. Yeah, click on that brush again and just click on the background, and it shows your mesh again. Yeah, so that's something also that's a very helpful tool. And another thing that we're going to be using a lot is the move tool and the rotate tool and the scale tool. So if we want to pose our character or scale up just a portion of his body, we could use the move tool, the scale tool. We could readjust our position. So one thing that we could also do is we could like, you know, the mask, you know, let's say I want to mask this area out, okay? You could invert the mask, Control I. And what's cool is you could have like the scale tool. Let's say I want to make the entire arms bigger, right? I could go to the scale tool, and you could go to the sculpt here, set pivot, and you could set it pivot to mask border, set pivot to mask, okay. Okay, so what we really want is we want to have this tool to start right here. And if it's not allowing you to put it right there, that's because what you need to do is you need to go to your mask right here, and you could kind of just paint this out with this mask. You could hold the shift key and then just kind of soften this out. So this is going to be like kind of in a way you're like activating this area. All right, so that way you're smoothing it, you're activating the area. So now when you go to the scale tool and you go to sculpt, set pivot, and you go pivot to mask border, it creates that scale tool wherever that border of the last mask that you have touched. And that way you're able to, let's say you want to scale out the arms of the character, you could scale it up easily, the entire arms, make it bigger. And then you go to the move tool, you can like move it down. All right, so this is something that we're going to be also using. And you saw how I smooth out the edges here. So that way there's like a nice transition. If you want to use the move tool or the rotate tool or the scale tool, there's like a nice transition between those, and you're not going to see like a huge seam here. And that's the purpose of using the mask and smoothing out the edges of the mask. All right, yeah, so those are the tools that I actually use a lot for sculpting characters, and I explained to you why I use them. And just keep in mind that you could also set your own shortcut for these, all right? For each of the tools that you're going to use a lot, yeah, I highly recommend you create shortcuts. And you do that by just right-clicking on the brush, and then you click Assign Shortcut, and then you just press the key that you want to be assigned for the brushes that you want to use, all right? Okay, and yeah, so those are just, I want to go over the tools that I'm using a lot, because in the next video, we are going to begin sculpting our character. Let's go ahead and start sculpting a character in Blender. Let's remove the default cube here. Let's create a UV sphere. Let's go to sculpt mode. Let's go ahead and turn on symmetry right here. Using the grab brush, let's go ahead and just move this down. So I am on my front view right here, and I like to, right off the bat, manipulate the shape from the front view and move the chin down. That just helps me better identify which one is the front view and the side view much easier. And then just moving this, trying to think about the basic shape of Chucky. I prefer to extend the sculpt mode panel so I could see more of the sculpting brushes. Now, another important thing, the focal length, I'm going to set it to 100. So setting the focal length here to 100 will give you a much better result so that your view of your character is not going to look distorted. So 100 millimeters for focal length is really the standard for the focal length here in Blender when you are doing a portrait or basically any character. And right here, I am on my side view, which is the right view. And you can see I got this nice shape of the head already. This is the chin area. Thinking about the basic shape of the skull, and this is kind of like the cranium area. Taking that shape as I'm doing this here. So the main tool that I'm going to be using when I'm starting out is just using the grab brush. Using the grab brush to just shape out the clay, taking up the basic shapes, pulling, pushing in the clay. That's all I'm doing right now. Taking the overall shape of Chucky, which is what I'm doing. Chucky, Child's Play. Yeah, I've been watching Chucky, the TV show lately, and I'm just inspired to do sculpture of Chucky. Yeah, Chucky has like a baby doll face, and it's a little squarish. And right now I am just thinking of the overall silhouette of it. Now I'm gonna need more geometry here to work with. This is not enough for me to work with. So going over here to the tool settings, if you go to the remesh rollout, you're gonna see the voxel size. You could bring down the voxel size so that you're going to have more geometry that you can work with, so you could add more details on there. Of course, we're not going to be adding micro details, but for something like this, it's too much of a low poly. We could barely do anything with it. So that's why I'm on my remesher here, and the voxel size, I'm going to go ahead and bring that down to 0.08. And I'm going to remesh that. Using my grab brush once again to just look in all views and further manipulating the overall silhouette of the head here. Using my scrape brush to just kind of flatten this area out. So right now, this brush right here, you scrape this area out, you could give that nice surface of the skull. So I'm thinking that somewhat of a helmet shape. So I got this shape right here, which is this part, and then yeah, going to have this shape here going that way using the scrape brush. So doing kind of like the side of the skull, thinking about the side of the skull right now. Looking from the front view. Use my grab brush to make the sides wider. And scrape brush to just scrape this area out some more. So you could see that we have this surface kind of flattened out just by using the scrape brush. Using the clay strip brush, I'm going to add the indication of Chucky's brow ridge and also the eye socket area. while I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about just the overall structure of the skull. So just push that clay in, and looking from the quarter view right here, you could see me, I kind of push this part in. So you don't want just a flat face like this, okay? You want to have a nice curve, whether you're doing a doll or just a human character. I see often beginner students, yeah, watching this video, you might be a beginner, but you know, you don't want to be a beginner in the future. So I'm telling you right now, you don't want to keep things flat like that. You want to have a nice curve on the skull. Whether you're doing a realistic character, a stylized character, that part is very important. And now I'm on the side view here. Push this back, and then for the nasal area, just kind of pushing that in. And I'm gonna pull out a portion here on the front for the nasal bone. So as you saw me do there, using my grab brush to just pull some geometry. That way I could have the shape. You got the forehead here and then the brow ridge. And then here we got the nasal bridge of the nose. And once you have that, you kind of know that later on you're going to have this indication. You're going to have the shape of the nose coming out from this nasal bridge, okay? And so this is definitely what I'm thinking about at the beginning when I am creating the basic shape. And just kind of push that in. With Chucky, he has more or less a somewhat a flat head, so it's kind of sloped, going this way, sloped. Or males, you would definitely see more that kind of slope forehead, but for females, you're gonna see more a round forehead type. All right, so really depending on the gender of the character. Like maybe if you're doing Chucky's bride, then you would see more she has a rounder forehead. I think she does. If they make her look feminine, that's how it would look like. Okay, now using the draw brush, you just bulk up the cheek area. Yeah, this is going to be the draw brush, which is my favorite tool to use when I want to bulk up, make some parts of the face, add more volume to some parts of the face. That's my favorite brush to use, which is what I'm doing right now for the front of the face of Chucky and the cheeks. And yeah, as you're doing this, you are never going to stick to just one brush strength or one brush size. You're going to constantly just changing these up. Especially at the beginning. Right now, I am really working with a low poly mesh. So you don't really want so much of a high strength. Because if your strength is too high, then and then you try to smooth this out, then it's just going to melt down the clay. So it really depends on which stage of you're on with the amount of geometry that you have, and also just really the amount of details that you need, which right now we are really not focusing on the details, just focusing on the overall basic forms of Chucky. Yeah, so just right here for the voxel size, I'm gonna bring it down so I could have more geometry to work with. 0.04. So jumping from 0.08 to down to 0.04 and then remesh that. That way, I need to do that when I'm on the part when I'm working on the eyes. 0.04 is still not a lot of geometry, but it's something that I could use so I could just introduce more forms on the face. And right here, I'm just masking out the nose area using the paint mask. Invert it, Control-I to invert. Using the grab brush, you can pull out the geometry for the actual shape of the nose there. Just gonna make this wider. Chucky quite have a very short nose, short and small nose compared to the rest of his facial features. And yeah, I think the biggest part of Chucky's eyes is gonna be his Chucky's face is gonna be his eyes. And right here, just further shaping the nose out. going back and forth between the clay strip brush and the draw brush. Right at the beginning, the main brushes that I use to add volume to the character is going to be the draw brush and the clay strip brush, and also the grab brush to just kind of shape out the forms of the character. And here I am just using my draw sharp to carve things in. When you are using the draw sharp, there's really not much lines or shape that you could add with the draw brush if you have a quite low geometry. So if you want to use this tool right here, you have to bring down the voxel size even more to even see the effect of that tool, and just remesh it. So at the point when you want to add some deeper lines, then you're going to have to definitely have more topology to work with. I'm going to have to work on this nose here. Push that in. I think it's sticking out too much, his nose. Pull that back in. There you go. Push that in. There you go. Yeah, make the nose smaller. He has a quite small nose. Even right now, I think his nose is still a little too wide, but that's going to be fixed. We're going to have to fix that. Using the clay strip brush to volumize. Just add some more bulk to the nose. At the same time, just keeping in mind that it does have to be quite small, his nose. And it's onto the eye area. So right now I am using the clay strip brush, laying down some clay inside the eye socket. So this is just going to serve as an eyeball, but later on we are going to have to add an actual sphere for the eyeballs, but it's good to have an overall shape there of how we want the eyeballs to look. This is going to be the eye socket. And yeah, inside that eye socket is going to be the eyeballs. So between the eyeballs and the eye socket, there's going to be some spacing there. And in here, in real life, you're going to have some fat, a combination of fat and muscles in here between the eyeballs and the orbital bone, just to protect the eyeballs from, of course, being hurt or anything that goes, because it's very delicate, the eyeball, so we need something to protect us. And that's we don't want the eyeballs to be too close to the eye socket bones. But yeah, right now I'm just bulking this up, going back and forth between the clay strip brush and the draw brush to bulk this up. Yeah, using the clay strip brush might not give you the effect you want, so you might want to use the draw brush. As I mentioned before, draw brush is just good for bulking things up. And pushing this out. Here you go. Looking from the top view and the bottom view. So when you're looking from the top, you should already think about the roundness of the eyes. Try to keep it round. Looking at the top and the bottom is very important. Looking at the side view is important. And when you're looking at the side view, you should have this kind of shape right there, all right? And yeah, later on, you're gonna have the eyelids there. But yeah, you're gonna have this nice angular later on when you do the eyelids. So this is the lower lids, this is the upper eyelids. And later on when you do those lids, the angle, you're gonna have to think of this angle right here. So the eyelids for the lower eyelids is gonna be pushed in a little bit more, and the eyelids for the top is gonna be pushed out a little bit more. So just think of that as you are doing the eyeballs already. The shape of the eyeballs. Once again, if it gets too stretchy, just go ahead and continue remeshing. Remeshing will allow you to redistribute the polygons. So right now I'm gonna go to my voxel size for my remesher and bring it down to 0.01 and remesh that. So remeshing is very important. You're gonna do that a lot in the beginning of the process because you're gonna be pulling and pushing the clay a lot, and so there's going to be a point where it's going to be hard for you to sculpt, and when it gets hard for you to sculpt, that's when you have to redistribute the polygons, which remesher does. And right now I'm thinking of the upper eyelids and the lower eyelids, just slowly adding them onto the eyeball area here on top. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the connection of the upper eyelids and the lower lids. So yeah, we have the orbit here, the orbital bone, eye socket, and then the eyelids is going to be connected right there on that bone. So this is going to be the upper eyelids, and then here is going to be the lower eyelids. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking about as I'm doing this here. As you can see, I do enjoy looking from the top view and the bottom view of the character. I think you could get the most out of your character shape, the accuracy of the character shape by focusing on those views, which a lot of people rarely do. They just like to look at the front and the side, but really kind of just ignore the top and bottom, which to me is just one of the most important views to look at when you're sculpting. Okay, and here I'm just adding the folds on the nose and the front of the side here in the corner of his eyes, inner corner of the eyes, and adding the folds. I said the flare. When someone's mad, you see the nose flared up, and then you're gonna see folds on there on the top of the nose area and onto the eyebrow area, and this and the inner part of the eyebrow there. Yeah, when you see someone with a flared up nose and they're looking mad, you're gonna see this type of folds on the nose. And that's what I'm just thinking of as I'm doing this here. And right here, using the clay strip brush, just accumulating the clay on the brow ridge, thicken that up. So he has quite really thick brow ridge, like almost caveman-like. It's funny because Chucky has very innocent looking cheeks, like very soft innocent cheeks. And then but when you look at his eyes, it becomes like manly looking, like serial killer manly feel to it. And yeah, I think it works for the type of personality that Chucky has. So yeah, at the beginning of your sculpting, it's going to look like a huge mess where you see like a lot of just like clay on top of each other, and that's how it's supposed to look like at the beginning. But you just have to focus on the actual forms on the eyes and the nose, trying to get it done before even thinking about adding all those details. Don't worry too much about the details right now. Again, right now I'm just making his face shorter and the side of his head a little narrower. Definitely look in all views when you're doing stuff in 3D. And here I'm using the scrape brush, just scrape that area. Using the clay strip brush to add more volume on the cheeks. And we could start to add the ear area. And here I'm just masking a part of the side of the head where I know I'm going to be extruding out the ears. So I'm masking the area out using the paint mask. Control I to invert it. And I think it's too much, the location here. So I don't want too much to be extruded. So now, after you mask that area out where you want the ears to be extruded, go to the move tool and then you're gonna go to sculpt mode, and then we're gonna go to set pivot there, and then pivot to mask border. Alright, so when you do that with the move tool here, this move tool will go right where you last painted your paint mask. Okay, and there you go. And I'm just gonna pull that out, extrude that out. And unmask that. Unmask it. Alt M to unmask. And using the draw sharp to just carve in the clay. Carve it in. And then using the scrape brush to just flatten this area out. So as I'm thinking about the ear, I am just thinking about this overall shape, this 3D shape here. And just making this like area flat using the scrape brush. And then using the grab brush to nudge things. Just nudge it to shape it more like the overall shape of the ear. And then masking this area out. I think it's too close to the eye, so I'm going to mask that, paint mask. Control I to invert, go to the move tool. And then using my move, I'm going to move it back. So I like this. I like masking specific areas and moving specific areas with the move tool. It just makes it a lot easier for me. You could also use the grab brush, but to me, it's a lot more efficient using the move tool and then masking. If you're going to do a large part of an area, you need to move a large part of the area. But using the grab brush is good if you want to just nudge or grab just a little portion of the face. But yeah, masking is a good tool to use. I use it a lot. And grabbing that, nudging it. And then pulling this in, and then right here, I'm just going to work on the cheeks. I think I made the cheeks a little too big. And then right here, I'm gonna use my draw sharp to just carve in the shape of the ears right here. So he's not gonna have much of a detailed ears because he is a doll. But however, if you are doing even a stylized ear, you're gonna still have to think of the two shapes. You're gonna think of this letter, like it looks like a letter C, or you could think of it as I guess a question mark if you need to. And then you have another shape inside, which kind of looks like a curved letter Y. Those are the two shapes that I think about when I am doing the ear area. And then push that clay in. Push that in. Okay, using the clay strip brush to just kind of push this clay in. Okay, now here I want to kind of make his forehead a little rounder. I think it's too squarish. And back onto the clay strip brush to give him more of that caveman forehead. He has a very manly forehead. Yeah, I think of his top of his head looks more like I would say more of a grown-up than a baby. And then the bottom part of his face is like a baby, which quite is ironic in my opinion. He really looks like an very interesting looking serial killer doll. Yeah, I would say Chucky's just one of the funniest villain characters out there. Just those expressions that he make when he kills someone is just priceless. A little too evil, but priceless. And I think that was the point of Chucky, you know? They try to make him, it's scary, but at the same time, real funny. Not so scary, I think he's more on the funny side. And yeah, right here, I just use the clay strip brush to just add some volume here on the cheek area. And you could see that there's much volume here, much needed volume on this face. And then here, we have more of a different, less volume around this area. Yeah, because around this, here you're going to see is nasolabial fold, which is also a prominent part of Chucky. So you have the nose here, right? And then you got a nasolabial fold. If you see some people have that, it's very noticeable, which is on Chucky it is. So now it's almost time to do the lip area using the clay strip brush to just add some clay in there. And then using the draw sharp brush, push that clay in for where I want the lips to go. Yeah, this is very important part, using the draw sharp here. Just carve in the clay for where you want the lips to go, and we are gonna shape this out. Right now it looks a little funny. It looks like you just drew something there, but we are going to shape this out like a lips. Going to add the philtrum part of his lips. Okay, now I'm gonna go and remesh this. I'm gonna bring down the voxel size. I need more geometry to work with. 0.009 and remesh that. Yeah, when you, right here on the lip area, we could go ahead and use the clay strip brush. Bring down your brush size. Hold control as you push the clay in with the clay strip brush. So remember, holding control as you paint with the brush allows you to push in the clay. And yeah, you see what I've done there. Just using the clay strip brush and then just pushing the clay in around this area gives you this nice little curve there, which is for the top of the lips. And then now for the bottom of the lips, gonna just push this clay in. So we got this shape here, and then we got this shape of the lip area for the bottom part of the lips, and then we got this shape for the top part of the lips. Right here, very important is you need to add this shape right here on the corner of the lips. Everybody has that on the corner. And then yeah, we got this lips right here going. Okay, push this in. So here, the way I've created this here, I use the draw sharp. Hold control on your keyboard to kind of indicate the border of the lips. Now when you're doing this, keep it at a small radius size and a low strength. You don't want to have this stick out too much, which won't be good. I'm gonna mask the upper lip along with the chin. So mask the lower part of the mouth, and then looking from my bottom view here, I'm gonna be working on the top lips here to just kind of make it rounder, because right now the lips here looks super flat. Okay, so when you're doing the lips, you need to kind of round it out from the bottom and the top. Using the grab brush, I'm just gonna pull that out. So you could see this is the reason why I masked this part out, so I could only work on the upper lips. And then later on, I will be doing the same thing for the lower lip. I'm gonna further round that out. And Control I to invert. And then looking from the top view here, you could round out the bottom lips. So when you're doing the lips, just think of a can of tuna. Have the lips look like it's wrapped around a can of tuna. So you don't want to end up with having wall lips, like flat lips, what I mean. And you can see I have this nice shape of Chucky going on already. I got the prominent caveman brow ridge, got a little curve there, and then you got the nose, then you got the lip area going. So you see it 1, 2, 3, 4, and that the shape of the lips there. And then you got the chin of Chucky going. Okay, now I am using back on my clay strip brush, pushing that clay in. Using the draw brush to kind of bulk things up because things are looking a little flat here, so using the draw brush to bring it out. Using my clay strip to add some fat on the lip area. Lay down some clay there. I'm gonna bring down the strength of my smoothing brush so I can smooth the clay without it melting down. Yeah, definitely when you're using the smoothing brush right at the beginning, when you have very low polygons, you want to have a strength that's quite low. Otherwise, you're going to end up just melting down the clay. Yeah, this is how I work. Like in the beginning, when I have a very low amount of polygons, my smoothing brush just has a very low strength. And then as my geometry, the amount of topology gets higher, the amount of polygon that I have gets higher, the more I increase the strength for my smooth brush. And yeah, right here, using the clay strip brush, just adding this shape for Chucky. You got this shape right here, and then I got this shape that I'm doing. Thinking of those forms as I'm creating his baby-like chin. And pushing that clay in. And using my grab brush, you're just gonna round out the head, widen it a bit. Looking from the profile view and the front view. Make it a little less wide. Yes, so you add more and more information on the face, the more you're going to be nudging things, grabbing your face here and there, manipulating the overall shape as you add more information. And now we are back on the eyes. I'm using the draw sharp to just push in the clay around this eye area where I know I want my eyeballs to go. And then constantly remeshing. So yeah, the more you push in the clay, the more you will see some stretching, and definitely use your remesher when you start to see a lot of stretching. So yeah, I'm just pushing this part of the clay in. That way I have like some depth in that space. And then I'm gonna just have my upper eyelids here and then my lower lids here. And then later on, we are gonna be adding the eyeballs inside here. And this is the reason why I'm pushing this clay in, so that when we add the eyeballs, a sphere inside, we're going to be seeing the sphere inside. So Control R and remesh. I'm going to bring down my voxel size to a lower value and remesh that. And then push it in using the draw sharp. You're going to have to go back and forth between using the draw sharp and using the clay strip brush to just push this in. Remember, if you want to push in the clay with the clay strip brush, you got to hold control. And then you're going to go back and forth between pushing in the clay and smoothing out the clay. Yeah, right now I'm using the draw sharp, so I don't really need to hold control as I do this, because the default, if you're on the draw brush, you do that, it just carves in the clay and makes a depth. And right now I'm using the scrape brush. Using this brush here to just make this eyelid a little bit more of a hard edge. So trying to flatten this part out for the lower lid. And we need to do the same thing for the upper lid. Yeah, using this brush will give us more of a hard edge that we need for the lids, the top lid and the lower lid of the character. And also you could do the same for the eyes there. You're gonna kind of flatten that part out. Using the clay strip brush to push this in. Now the top lid, the bottom lid, scraping this area out to give that nice hard surface look. Clay strip brush to just do draw brush, draw sharp, and clay strip brush, going back and forth between those tools. Scrape that. Just really focusing on the eyes here. Really, when I'm doing characters, the number one thing that I focus on are the eyes. Because really, when you look at someone, that's really the first thing that you look at, that really tells the personality of the character. It gives you a lot of information about the character just by looking at the eyes. So really spend your time on that. So now create a brand new UV sphere. So this is a separate geometry that I'm creating for the eyeball. Yeah, create a brand new sphere and then just put it inside the eye socket area. And then just go ahead and scale that down. It's good to have an eyeball inside there already. That way we could kind of shape out our eyelids a little more accurately. And when you're thinking about the placement of the eyeballs, you have to think of it as, so you have the eyeballs here, and then think of the lower eyelids as it's like wrapping around the shape here, and then the lower eyelids kind of ends like right here where the eyeballs, the edge of the eyeballs is for Chucky, and then you got the upper eyelids right here, and gonna shape that out like that. So that's what I'm thinking about as I'm doing the placement already of Chucky's eyeballs. Scale that down. Also, when you're doing placement and scale of the eyeballs, usually this is how it is in general. You got one eyeball there, and then you got another eyeball right here, and then you should have 3 eyeballs that could fit in, roughly about 3 eyeballs that could fit in here. This is how you could tell that you have good size of eyeballs, if you could fit in 3 eyeballs in there. But of course, there's always a little bit of minor exceptions depending on the character. All right, so some character, their eyeballs will be a little bit more spaced out, their eyes would be a little bit more spaced out. Some characters, their eyes are a little bit more closer together. All right, and their nose are a little narrower. Really look at your character and observe exactly how you want this to look. Okay, so we're gonna be mirroring this. In order for you to mirror the geometry properly, you need to make sure that you set the pivot to the cursor. So it should be in the middle of the grid, the cursor. Otherwise, the mirror is not gonna work, okay? So yeah, if you guys look, it's just gonna move that in. Right here, set pivot. As I was mentioning before, if you see that the move tool is right here on the eyeball, you need to make sure that you go to set origin to 3D cursor, so it goes back in the middle of the grid wherever the cursor is. In my case, it's in the middle of the grid. So origin to 3D cursor. Then I'm gonna add the mirror, so that way it mirrors properly. And back onto the sculpt mode here. Looking from the bottom view here, you can see that this part of the eyelids is way too thick compared to this here. So this is gonna be not correct. You gotta make sure that this is kind of as accurate as possible, the thickness as it wraps around the eyeball. And yeah, make sure it looks like it's wrapping around the eyeball. So that will prevent you from creating flat eyes. You don't want the eyes to look flat, all right? So just by thinking about how it's wrapping around the eyeballs, looking from the top view and the bottom view will definitely help you out a lot. And then just push that, pull it back. And same here, just pushing it forward to have it look like it's wrapping around the eyeballs. And you do want some thickness on, the upper eyelids and the lower eyelids. So yeah, you want some thickness there, guys. That will give you some nice depth and highlights on the character's eyes when you start to add lights in the scene. Grab that. Scrape that. Okay, back on the eyeball area here. I'm gonna go ahead and rename this eyes. And I'm gonna make the eyes, I'm gonna make it not selectable. Go to sculpt mode. So you wanna be able to just disable the eye geometry. Okay, that way when you are back to sculpting the head or the face, you're not accidentally touching the eyeballs. Using the draw brush, sculpting that. Bulking this up. So there's some lumpiness going on here where it looks like it's lumpy here and then it gets pushed in here and then lumpiness again. So a way to fix some lumpiness on your geometry is just using the good old scrape brush here. So that just kind of flattens the clay. Flatten this. So going back and forth between the clay strip brush and the scrape brush to fix this lumpiness area, scraping that, so that just will kind of smooth out the clay. Sometimes using smooth brush is just not gonna work when you want to fix the lumpiness. Sometimes you gotta use the scrape brush. And here using the clay strip brush to add more thickness on the side of the lids. And you can see here using the clay strip brush, I like to use that to just have this nice skin feel where the upper eyelids just connect to this part of the skin. And that's what I'm doing right now, just thinking about the stretchiness of the skin using the clay strip brush, thinking about the flow of the skin here. So I'm really just trying to make this semi-realistic, not fully stylized. Here, adding more folds using the clay strip brush. Yeah, right now everything looks symmetrical, but later on you will make this asymmetrical. Yeah, this is how I work in the beginning. I like to keep my symmetry turned on just to make things go faster and easier. And then later on, I will be turning off my symmetry and make things look more irregular. Oh yeah, he is definitely looking a little scarier. And here, just gonna go and kind of fix up the nose. Gonna smooth this out. There you go. Yeah, nose is looking a little funny. By using my draw sharp to just carve in this area here, to push in the clay for the opening of the nose. Pushing the clay in using the draw sharp. Once again, constantly remesh, especially if you are stretching the clay a lot. Remember to just remesh it constantly. And right there, just adding the nasal labial fold around the face there, where it meets up with the nose. Using the scrape brush, just flatten that out. At the same time, of course, you still want it round, wrapped around the eyeballs. And back on the lip area, I want to make him smile even more. You want smiling Chucky. Lift up the lips. Yeah, when you're thinking about doing characters, another thing that you need to think about is just the spacing. Some people, their nose will be really far apart from the lips, so maybe the spacing for everybody between the lips and the nose is going to be different. Some people, their lips are going to be closer to the nose area, and some will be a little farther. And also it depends on the race of the character. Yeah, from what I've noticed for African American, the spacing between the nose and the mouth is a little bit wider. There's a little bit more spacing there than Caucasian. And for white Caucasian, it's a little closer together. You could see more of that closer together. But it really depends on the individual. You could also think about if the character is biracial, so that will also make a huge difference on the proportion of the facial features, the overall features of the face. Lift that up. There you go. And then using my grab brush, gonna go ahead and fix the cheeks. And then gonna go ahead and just start smoothing things out. I'm just gonna move this out. Yes, it's looks a little strange from the side view. I'm gonna have to do some fixing here. So the lips is a little strange. It looks a little flat. So I'm gonna lift this up, looking from the top and the bottom view here. Scrape this, flatten that out. Okay, so I am looking from this view. I'm gonna have this and then this shape and then down. So this is the top lips, down and then down again. Here. It's kind of like a zigzag or stairs. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at the lips. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and bring down my smoothing brush, and then I'm just gonna go to every part of my Chucky to polish this up and smooth, because of course we don't want to leave it like that. He looks way too old with all those forms. So yeah, right now this is gonna be the easiest part, where I'm just smoothing everything so he looks younger. You're never gonna stick to one brush strength. You're gonna have to sometimes use a strength of 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. Really vary the strength as you're doing each part of the face, smoothing each part of the face. Alright, that looks so much better when it's smoothed out. Yeah, like I told you guys before, at the beginning it's going to look a little rough, but at the end, with the smoothing brush, everything's gonna start to look good. And then back on the eye area again, I want to revisit the eyelids. You can see how much time I'm really spending on the eyes. Onto the philtrum. So when you are doing the philtrum on the lips, you have this shape going. And then you got this dip here, which is in the middle of the lips there. And then yeah, we got this nice shape of the lips. Alright. Now I'm gonna go to my, I'm gonna go, let's see here, back to sculpt mode. For my face, I want to bring down my voxel size to 0.006 and remesh that. Okay, for this, I do want to work further on the eyes here. Yeah, it looks a little messy still, so I'm gonna smooth this out. If it melts too much, don't forget to bring down the strength of the smoothing brush. And yeah, to be able to add those details on the eyes, you're gonna have to have a low value for your voxel size for your remesher. Push that in. Now keep in mind that this type of geometry, with just doing a remesh geometry here, we're doing this for more like concepting. Alright, this is more of a concept art or concept designing, this type of method of workflow. But if you do want to make this animatable, then you're gonna have to create a more animation friendly topology. So you cannot just leave it as a remesh geometry, because if you look at the wireframe of this later on, it's just not going to be animatable. Like I said, it's good for concepting, for creating fast sketches to show to your boss or the company you're working for, the design of the character, doing a fast sculpted sketch. But as far as production use for animation, then you're going to have to retopologize this and project the details and add more micro details and so on. And you can see there, I have used the draw sharp to just add a little bit of bumps here for the caruncle of the eye. Basically, this is the wet part of the eye, and this just adding a little bit of details there. And you can see the eyeball is kind of sticking out. I'm going to use my grab brush to pull that out. And just bring the clay up. I think it's too large, the upper face, the lower part of the face. Here you go. Yeah, I could really feel that Chucky feel to him. Yes, that naughty Chucky look. You could really see it in him. I'm making him a more furious, angrier. There you go. He kind of looked like an orc, like the brow ridge. Look like he has really a lot of testosterone around this area here. Alright, back on object mode, I'm gonna go to the eyeballs. I'm gonna make the eyeballs selectable. And I'm gonna go to sculpt mode. I'm gonna go to my remesher. I'm gonna bring down my voxel size for my eyeball area. That way we have more geometry. And I'm gonna remesh that and smooth it. I think we need more geometry. 0.06 is fine, not too much. Okay, now we could add just some slight details on the eyeballs. Okay, so what I'm going to do to add the details is I'm going to use my paint mask. But before we do that, I'm going to bring down the voxel size even more. 0.05 voxel size, so we could add more information there. Using my paint mask, I'm masking the area for the iris part. So he is a doll, so he's going to have a larger iris than a regular human being. So if you look at dolls, they do have quite large iris and pupils. So I'm masking this area out. Control I to invert it. I'm gonna go to my move tool. I'm gonna turn on my yeah. And then push that in. Push that in some more. This might work, or probably, I think I want it to be, okay. I'm gonna smooth this out. Okay, I probably need to bulk this up instead. But yeah, I'm gonna smooth this out here. But I think I'm gonna need to do some, I'm gonna bulk up this area because I don't want it to look flat. Yeah, looking at this here, this is not really gonna work because if you look at the upper eyelids, it's not working. It doesn't look like it looks like it's no longer wrapping around a round shape. So this definitely gotta be fixed. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna bulge this up. But I'm just pushing in the clay there for the details, and then I'm gonna bulk this up. So yeah, you can see right now, I'm talking about that the lids here, it doesn't look like it's wrapped around a round shape anymore, which is not what we're going for. But it's okay, this could be fixed. I'm gonna use my grab brush to just make this bulky again. But at the same time, we still have the details that we created, which is good. Yeah, so when you're looking from the top, you still want it to look like it's definitely wrapping around. A nice round shape. And yeah, I just turned off my face of my Chucky. That way I could further see what's going on. And bulk that up. Move this down. Move that down. There you go. Good. He looks definitely creepy. I'm gonna bring down the voxel size so it's less pixelated. I'm gonna remesh that. Great. Carve this in with the draw sharp brush. Oh yeah, just have those eyes pop out like that. Cool. He has those piercing, menacing eyes of a serial killer. Alright, and I'm back on my sculpting mode for my face. I'm going to just look at the bottom view and top view of the eyes and just round this out as needed. Spending a whole lot of time on the eye area. Oh, I accidentally scaled that when I'm not supposed to. Scrape this. Scrape that. and smooth this out. There you go, carve that in. Add some break up there. Okay, and I'm gonna go change that. So yeah, right here, I really like to, after, like, I'm using the default material, different default shader for sculpting, which to some people they don't really like that, but I do like to start out like this because it allows me to really exaggerate on the forms. And this type of shader, you won't see as much details with what you're doing, which is, in my opinion, is good to start out with, because I tend to add less details than what's needed. So by having this type of shader at the beginning, I'm able to exaggerate more on the forms, on the details that I need. And then later on, I go back here to the viewport shading, and then I'm going to set it to matte cap. Like for further detailing, I like to go to my matte cap. Of course, you're never going to stick to just one shader. You're going to have to go back and forth between different shaders, which is what I do. Yeah, but at this point, after I do the basic forms and I want to add, I want to check the forms, I want to check the overall shape, then I change it to matte cap, because the matte cap will allow you to see more of the details that you added. But yes, as I mentioned before, using the shader that doesn't give you as much detail, that doesn't reflect as much details they add at the beginning, to me, it just allows you to create more of the necessary forms and everything. Basically, it makes everything more detailed if you have something that's less visible for the shader, less visible for the details that you have really adding. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna mask this area out using the grab brush and fix the upper eyelids. Yep, I need to move this up. There you go. And so you can see the type of eyelids that I have. I have this going, right? And we got the eyeball there, which is nice. Ooh. Okay, now we can make this asymmetrical. So I just turned off the symmetry, no longer have symmetry turned on. And then I'm on my grab brush. I'm going to add some asymmetrical shape to this. So maybe I could lift up the eyes here, the brow ridge, lift it up. So it's not exactly the same on both sides. This will just give me more of that believable feel to the character. So yeah, this is what I do for all my characters. After I have the shapes, all the forms that I need, then I go and make it asymmetrical. Yeah, nothing in life is perfect. And whether it's a pretty person or an ugly person or a creepy looking person, yeah, nobody is perfectly symmetrical. So you could make a part of the lips higher, maybe a part of the nose lower. Just subtle asymmetrical forms like that will just come a long way when making things look more convincing. There you go. Yeah. Very nice. I'm gonna bring down my voxel size to 0.004 and remesh that. This is gonna be more for that polished look to it. Remesh that. Okay, so I'm going to start to add the scar on Chucky's face using the draw sharp. And now I'm gonna do is turn on the stabilize stroke. If you are having a hard time creating the scar, yeah, go into the tool settings. If you go to stroke rollout, you're gonna see stabilize stroke. Just go ahead and turn that on. That will allow you to create a scar much more accurately. Yeah, make sure that for your draw sharp, you have quite a high strength. At the same time, you have enough geometry to work with. Otherwise, it's going to be too pixelated if you don't have enough geometry and using the draw sharp. Here you go, carve that in. Yeah, we're gonna rough them up. Rough them up. And here, there you go, it's gonna come down right over here. And then over here, we're going to add some right there. Right now, it is too perfect to carve, but we could fix that up later to make it more irregular. But this just makes things go faster. Then we got one on the lips. For the lip area, we are gonna have it come down right here onto the chin. There you go. And then we have one right here also. Definitely look at your reference. Yeah, for my reference, I'm using Chucky from Child's Play, where he has all those stitches. So I really don't want him to look like a plain doll, so I just want to really... I like doing rough things like this, to be honest. I think the uglier, the better, because I feel more loose. I feel like I have more freedom. So yeah, I really like doing ugly faces by, society standards. I mean, if you think Chucky's cute, there's also nothing wrong with that. There are times where I actually thought Chucky was a little cute in the TV shows, but then it's just when he starts turning into this little monster. It's interesting because in the TV show or the movie, when he doesn't turn into a live Chucky, when it's just the doll, it actually looks cute. But then when he turns into the actual character, the criminal, he looks different. Like the eyes start to get bigger and the brow ridge start to have that caveman look. Yeah, I think Chucky it's a classic character. And we could add a variance of scar here. So yeah, I think whoever made the design for Chucky, it really works, I think. Alright, I think his face right now just look a little chunky, so I'm gonna go to my grab brush. I'm gonna turn on the symmetry again and just make this smaller. There you go. Because Chucky, I would say his forehead here is definitely bigger than his overall face. And yeah, make it smaller. So that way you could really notice his eyes a lot more. And just keep in mind that he still has a little bit of square face. Alright, something like that. Maybe this. There you go. Okay. Alright, now we could go ahead and start to do the stitches. So we got the we carved in the areas where we're going to add our stitch. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to be masking a part of the mesh and then creating one stitch out of that and then duplicating it around the areas where we want the stitches to go. Selecting our character, let's go back to sculpt mode. I'm gonna go to masking. I don't need the symmetry turned on, I'm gonna turn that off. Okay, I'm going to mask an area here where I know this is gonna be the shape of the stitch. So I can make it longer. All right, and then we could go to masks, extract, turn off extract as solid. I'd like to turn that off, and I like to just manually extrude it myself because I get a lot of issues if I had this turned on. So I just turn that off and press OK and just wait for a bit. There you go. And so now I have something like this. It's just a flat geometry. Okay. Okay, and I'm gonna go hit the tab key, go to face selection, select the faces here, and I'm gonna press E to extrude that out. Got something like that. And then I'm gonna go to sculpt mode, and I'm gonna remesh this 0.004. I think I'm gonna set to 0.002 and remesh. All right, and then I'm gonna go smooth this out. Here you go. So shape it more like how a stitch would look like. Okay, just move that out. Smooth it. Go. And I'm gonna go to object mode, and right now the move tool is right here. I'm gonna go to set origin to geometry, so the move tool is right where it's supposed to go, and I'm gonna go move it right in place here and move it back here. All right, make sure that you do this. The move tool has to be right on the geometry. Make sure that you do what I just did, because what we're gonna be doing is we are going to create a curve that will follow the shape of the thing here that we carved, and then we're going to be duplicating this all around to follow that curve. All right, and in order for that to work, the move tool, the pivot, should be right on the mesh. Okay, so first, to create a curve, we got to create a Bezier curve around the areas where we want our stitch to go. So selecting the character, actually let's go to add, let's go to curve, let's go click Bezier, and you should see it. So right now it's inside my character. If I move it, it's right here. So it's just went inside there. I'm gonna hit the tab key, and so we see the vertex. See the vertex here, right? And what we need is, we just needed to create that Bezier curve, but we need to remove the points. So press A to select all the control points, and press X, and we need to delete the vertices, okay? While we're still on the edit mode for our Bezier, it's still existing. So even though the control points are gone, we still have our Bezier curve. We just need to go to our draw right here. All right. While we're on draw, Shift Z, because we need to see our mesh. Okay, let's find a better view. I'm gonna do this part first. So we need to find a good view where we're gonna be able to draw on that surface properly. Okay, so back on to draw, and then we got to go to this little arrow right here, or press N on your keyboard, and then you go to tools. This is very important for the depth. Make sure you set it on surfaced, so we are able to draw right on the surface. And then let's go ahead and start drawing. Take your time slowly. Have it just follow the line. Oh, kind of messed up there, but it's all right. All right, so maybe just up to here is all I need. All right, So got that, and you could always, once you're done, just click anywhere here on the tool here, and you can hit the tab key, you get out of edit mode, and you press G. There's your Bezier, and it is following the line here. Now what we need to do is we need to select our stitch, this one geometry stitch that we made, and then hold the shift key and select your Bezier curve. I think it's best for us to freeze our character so we're not accidentally selecting our character. I'm gonna name this, of course, Chucky. I'm gonna make that I'm gonna disable the selection, so I'm not selecting that. I'm gonna select the stitch and then select the Bezier curve that I made. And this is very important that we do this. Let's go to Edit, Preferences, and on the add-on, on the add-on here, we need to type in Align. Make sure Align Tools is turned on. I already turned mine on because we are going to be aligning the geometry to the curve, okay? So select your geometry, hold the shift key, and then select your curve. And then we go to our item tab here, and then you're going to see the Align Tools if you have turned on the add-on. And then you just click on Align Location plus Rotation. And once you do that, you're going to see that the stitch geometry went inside the character, or it just goes in the middle here. Inside the head, it just went in there. Okay, that's fine, but we just got to know that it is there. You see it's in there. Alright, so once it's in there, we gotta add an array modifier because we gotta make multiple copies of the stitch. Let's go to our modifier and add an array, and you can see that there's more than one, and you could go to the array here and add more. Okay, so I could do it we could add more as we go. So we need to add an array, but we need to have this follow the curve that we have made here. So to be able to do that, let's go ahead and select our mesh again. So after we add the array modifier, let's go ahead and add the curve modifier right here, curve. And then you're going to see curve object. Click on the eyedropper right here, and then go ahead and hover your mouse over the Bezier curve that you made on Chucky. There you go. And you could see that it's following now. You could see it's following the curve. And if you go back to the array and add more on number on the count, you could see that I could create as many as I want, but it's not really going in the right direction. So what we could do is we could hit the tab key, all right? And if we go to the tab key, we don't see the thing anymore, right? We don't see the stitches. But to be able to show that, just go turn these two icons on. I think I could just turn this on. Oh yeah, I think you could just turn this one on. This one is the edit mode. Just turn on edit mode, okay? So while you're in edit mode, you could still see what's going on. So while you're in edit mode, go ahead and select the geometry here. And then you could rotate it. Press R. You could press R and then X to rotate in the X direction. Or you could press R and then Y to rotate in the Y direction. So I think that's what I need. Rotate it in the Y direction. Okay. Good. You could even rotate R and then Z to rotate in the Z direction. But yeah, mess around with the rotation to rotate the original piece. And yeah, you just need to make sure that you have edit mode turned on so you could see exactly what you're doing. All right, and once you're done with that, you could go back to the count here, go back to the array, mess around with the factor X. You could mess around with the spacing, how far apart the stitches are. So I'm gonna go to the factor X here and just crank it up so it's got a farther apart from each other. And I could also just increase my count. So I could have it go maybe up to here is fine. All right. And we could also, I think I want to do some more rotation here. I'm going to press R and then X. There you go. And do it again. R and then X. Go. All right. Okay, once you're happy with that, you go ahead and apply. Yeah, right now there's a lot of adjustment that we need to make, but we could just go ahead and apply the modifiers that we have made. I'm gonna go apply all of these. Make sure you're on object mode, and then hit apply and apply. And of course, we could always go back to sculpt mode, and then going back to the draw brush here, could go ahead and bring this out just by using the draw brush, and then just sculpting it to just bring the mesh out would be fine. So this is just going to be a lot easier than just doing it manually. And there are still some things here that you need to kind of adjust. But yeah, it's much better than doing it and duplicating it. You could kind of move this. Move it how you want it. Go back and forth between using the grab brush and the draw brush, and then you could smooth it. If it's too thick, the stitches are too thick, you could smooth it. And if it's too thin, you could go to the inflate brush, inflate it. Yeah, I'm just gonna go and go to my smoothing and crank up the value for that. Yeah. And then just smooth it. There you go. Crank up. So we have something like that. And of course, if it's okay, there's a few things here that's still sticking out, like this right here, because I didn't really do the curve right. So I can go to my I could go to my edit mode here, select this, and then just gonna move it. There you go. Go to sculpt mode, and just gonna move this like this. I could go to my masking and then just mask this area out. All right, mask this area out, Control I, and then just go ahead and move this down, this down. All right. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and unmask and smooth. There you go. I could also remesh this, Control R to remesh, and then go to my inflate and just inflate this up, smooth it, inflate. The smoothing is just too much, so I'm gonna bring down the strength. Right, and then remeshed. Okay, so this part is all good. Everything's good there. All right, great. And move this. No problem. Okay, great. All right, so that's that there, and I want to add more variety to this. I think it's too perfect, the stitches, so I'm just gonna nudge and kind of move things here and there. All right. Okay, so that's one stitch there, and we could also do the others using the same method that we did, basically creating a Bezier curve, removing the points on that first Bezier curve, and then we are going to use our geometry to have the geometry follow the curve. So basically the same process. I'm gonna see it right here. I'm gonna go hit the tab key. I'm gonna just make a copy of one of these, this right here. I'm gonna hover my mouse over here, press L, Shift D to make a copy, press P, separate by selection, Okay, so this is the one I'm gonna be using. If I go to the move tool is all the way over here. So this is very important. Set origin to geometry. And I'm gonna go ahead and move this down. I'm actually gonna make more copies of these. Shift D to make a copy so that, because I'm gonna need it for all the other stitches here. Shift D, here you go. Okay, so doing the same process. I'm gonna go do this part right here. I'm going to, I have, for the face, I have disabled selection. So I'm gonna turn on the selection again because we need to be able to select the face to be able to draw the curve. So I'm gonna turn on my Chucky face so I'm able to select it again. And I'm gonna go to add, and I'm gonna go add another Bezier. So for each of the stitch that you need to make here, you gotta create a Bezier curve for each of those, okay? It's very important to do that because if you do it all in one curve, and then if you do the alignment and the location rotation, it's just not gonna work out, all right? So let's go ahead and add. So I'm doing the jump area here, same process, curve, Bezier, and it, of course, it goes inside again in the middle here. I'm gonna hit the tab key and select all the control points, press X and remove the vertices. While we're still there on the edit mode for our Bezier, as you can see there, it's called Bezier Curve 001 and the previous one is called Bezier Curve. Okay, I'm gonna go to my draw here. Actually, I'm gonna make sure I find a better view because I need to draw right on the chin here. So I'm gonna go here, and very important that we go to our tools, make sure you set it to surface, and then just draw. Take your time. There you go. If I hit the tab key and press G, there is the curve. Now we could use one of these. Select one of the geometry here, hold the shift key and select. Okay, I'm gonna freeze my head again for my Chucky. I'm gonna select my mesh here, hold shift, select the curve. All right, and then gonna go to align, location rotation, X, Y, Z. And of course that goes in the middle right here. Yeah, it went right there in the middle as it did before with the previous one, but it's okay. With this selected, let's go add an array. And you remember you could space it out if you need to. You could add some more values here. And then we could add a curve. And then let's go click on the eyedropper here for a curve. Sample the one that we just made on the chin. And there you go. And of course, we gotta make some changes here. Hit the tab key, and I'm gonna turn on edit mode for the curve right here so we can see what's going on as we adjust. Shift Z. So I'm gonna select my polygon for the original mesh. And then while we're looking here, we could start rotating. Press R, X. Okay, let me see. I don't think it's gonna work. Press R, X. Oh yeah, I think that's what we need to do. RX, RX, there you go. RX. And then we could also maybe Y. Yeah, I think that will work. RY. RY. You might do it slowly. You might have to do it once, RY, and then click, and then RY again. Yeah, something like that. I think that will work. RY. And I'm gonna press RX again. Yeah, something like that. RX, RX, RX. Okay, RX. All right, great. I think that's good. And I'm gonna go add more count. Click, and you can see it's creating all around. Okay, some more. And some more. Okay, good. All right, so that's great. Now I'm gonna go collapse. I'm gonna apply this all. I'm gonna hit the tab key and then apply all my modifiers, and then go to sculpt mode. And of course, we need to make some adjustment. You could use a grab brush to just kind of move it out, or which I like to do the most, is just using the draw brush and then just sculpt to bring it out. Just bring it out using the draw brush, just sculpting that. There you go. And I think I did this one better than the other one. Yeah, good. This is almost perfect, but just a bit some manipulations here. But yeah, this is actually pretty good. Yeah, I did this one better than the first one. It just takes practice. Okay, and of course, if it's too perfect, you could just kind of nudge it around. So, because the stitch is definitely not going to be perfect. This is man-made. It's not made out of machine. So you could kind of make things go a little higher, go a little lower, and so on. And then you could smooth it so that it's a little thinner if you need to. All right. And of course, if it's too long, you could make it shorter. And some parts could be longer, some parts could be shorter. Okay, and that's basically what we're going to be doing for the rest of the geometry here. That's what you need to do here. Same concept, just create your curve and then have the duplicate that you made for the stitch follow the curve. Yeah, and just make sure before you have it follow the curve that you need to use the align tool so that will work properly. And then you got to add the array and the curve modifier for those. And yeah. All right, and you can see that I have completed the stitches using the same process that I have showed you previously. And I also added a stitch here, add an extra one. Another thing that you should watch out for is when you are doing stitches. If you look here, it's best if you go to sculpt mode and try not to make it so perfect. Maybe add a little bit of waviness to this because, you know, this is not supposed to be perfect, all right? So you could go to each of what you have and just kind of add a little bit of irregularity to the shape so it doesn't look fake, all right? Something like that. All right, with that said, let's move on to doing Chucky's hair. The way we're gonna do Chucky's hair is just by doing a stylized type of hair. Let's go Shift A and let's create a pat. And so we see that curved pat right there. We could just move it forward so we can see what we're working with. And let's go Shift A and create a curved circle. Move it forward, and we gotta rotate this way 90 degrees, and then we go and scale it down. We're going to create a stylized hair using a curved circle and using this pat that we made. You can want it smaller. Okay, now we could go ahead and select our pat that we made. So we have a pat and we have a circle. Select the pat, and then you could go to the open object data properties. You could go to the geometry rollout here and then set it to under the bevel. Click on object and then click on the eyedropper here and then sample the Bezier circle. And then now we have something like this. We could go to our circle now and hit the tab key and going to tweak right here. You could shape this out and it will change the shape of your mesh for the pat. And if you want to add more details to this, which you will need to add more details, I could select 2 points and I could right click and subdivide, and that will give you more of that strand-like type of detail. As you can see right here, that's what it did. Yeah, so look at your reference, the hair reference, and just look at that and see how much detail you really need for that. So this is what I'm doing for this, just going to these and just adding some subdivision, maybe also here. And I think it's best to do this while we are on the front view, straight from the front view. And I'm gonna go add subdivision here. And you could also move the handles. That'll make it easier for you, which also will give you a sharper look. Subdivide. And I could look at what I have so far. So this is what I have. Very nice. Could go add one right here and move this. See how that looks like. Okay, good. Now we could hit the tab key and we could select our path now. Select this here. We could go ahead and rotate that. Make it stand 90 degrees like that. And if you hit the tab key, you could see the points that you have for your mesh here. You could select each of these points and move it and kind of shape it out to fit your character's head. And you could also select the point. You could, when you select one point at the end, you press Alt S on your keyboard to scale it down so you got the nice tip for the hair. Alright, and yeah, you could move it. You could hit the tab key and scale it. You could even make it longer. You could even add some points, some more points if you need to further shape it out. You could select 1 point there, 1 point there, right click and subdivide, and now you have an extra point. You could also select a point and Control T, and you could like twist this if you need to. Control T to twist, which I don't need to twist it. But yeah, let's say I have something like this, and you could hit the tab key and just move this where you want it to go, which is on our head. It's where we want it to be. You can even scale this down, or you could even go back to this here, to the shape that you have. If you think this is too thick, right? You go to your circle, Bezier circle, and you could scale it down. You could see it gets thinner. Okay, so maybe I want it kind of something like this. Yeah, something like that to work with. Okay, so now I'm gonna go and shape this out and have it on my character's head here. Hit the tab key, and I'm just gonna move this here. Just gonna shape it out. So thinking about the start of the root, which is gonna be somewhere around here for Chucky. You can move it this way. I think I'm gonna put it right in the middle. Right there in the middle. Right. And move it. Move it up. Great. And kind of make it go this way. Alright, so I got one there. Hit the tab key to go back to object mode. And I could go ahead and duplicate this. Shift D. And I'm going to hit the tab key. I'm going to go ahead and move this. This is going to be right here. I want it to be kind of in the middle. Right there. Okay. Something like that. Right here. And I'm gonna make it go this way. like this in here. And I think I could use some more vertices here, some control points. So I'm going to select this point and this point, right click and subdivide. There you go. That way I could kind of curve this out to better fit the hair. Could make this a little longer. There you go. And kind of pull this down. Alright, something like that. Hit the tab key. And then if I go here, you see the move tools all the way over there. To make it easier for me to move, I'm going to have to set it back to geometry. Set origin to geometry. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. Rotate it this way. Move it here. Alright, and then move it right here. Yeah, something like that. Hit the tab key. Another thing about this that you could do to make it easier for you to move the points is you could turn on proportional editing right here. Turn that on. So when you're moving it, you could move and influence the points surrounding the points that you're selecting. So there's a wider range of points that you could move. So you could click on the point. You could press G and then scroll your mouse to make the influence larger, so you can move more of the points. Alright, so this is also one thing that I like to use. I'm just gonna make sure that it's not so big, the influence. Bring that down. There you go. And this could be here, right here. I want it in the middle, truly in the middle. Turn off proportional editing. So just trying to have it fit there. There you go. I think that's good. Alright, and then I think I want to move this back like this. Go. And now I'm gonna duplicate some more. I'm gonna have to make the rest of these. So going through the same process, just duplicate, and then you can rotate as needed. And move it. You can also set it to view, or maybe local will be better. Here you go. And hit the tab key. And of course, go ahead and adjust that. And then duplicate again. Rotate. Rotate Y or maybe Z. This way. And that way. And then just move it. There you go. Hit the tab key. Alright, so basically this is the same process that I'm going to do, just repetition of duplicating and moving this. And if you need more points, you could always select 2 points and then right click and subdivide. And you could also use proportional editing to move a wide range of points. And yeah, this is what you're going to be seeing me do for the rest of this part of the hair. Okay, so I got the hair there, and I want to make a few adjustments. I don't want it to look like it's overlapping in the front at all. So I'm gonna go move that forward, and then this one forward. There you go. All right. Now, what we could also do is we could add some little strands of hair sticking out, little thinner strands of hair, so they're all not the same size. And to do that, we could just we could work from what we have here with this one, and we could also just make a copy of this. Shift D to make a copy. So this is gonna be for our smaller hair strands. But the thing is, if we start changing this and changing the shape of this and just make this the overall piece here smaller, everything gets thinner around here. So we don't want it to influence the rest of the hair. We only want this to influence this here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna select all of our geometry that we made for our hair. I'm gonna go ahead and hide the face, select all the geometry for the curves here that I made for the hair. And actually I have to do it one by one. I'm gonna go show Chucky. I'm gonna go select this object, convert to mesh. Now I have to do it for the rest. I'm gonna go select this, Shift R to repeat the last action. So I'm gonna do it for all of these. And when we when we convert it to mesh, if we go over here, hit the tab key, let's say we manipulate this here and scale it, you see how it's only changing the areas that we have not yet converted. So yeah, so if you want to make it permanent, we could go to each of these, go to convert to meshed. Okay, so we're gonna do it for the rest of the hair that we want. Actually, I'm gonna just hide the head. Oops. Yeah, so just going to each of these and converting all of them. All I'm doing. You could see it's turning from 30 and then it's turning it to something else. So if right now this is not converted, you could tell because when you click on it, it has still all these options for the shape. But if you convert it, you no longer see those options. Right, so going to all of these. I think everything's good now. Right, and if I just double check, hit the tab key and scale this. Right, I think everything is converted for this part. So this is the only thing that's changing. Right, so what I could do is I could scale it really smaller. So I got a smaller one that I could definitely use. Something like that. Okay, I'm gonna show Chucky's face again. So I got something to work with. And I'm gonna go ahead and move it here. Right here. Hit the tab key. And yeah, I'm gonna go back to tweaking stuff. So yeah, just doing the same process I had before. So just gonna make it fly away a little bit. So there's a little bit of breakup on the hair, which makes it look much better. And I'm gonna Shift D to duplicate that. Move it down, hit the tab key. And yeah, just go ahead and changing this up. Yeah, so that really gives us a nice little break to the hair. Could also add it here and rotate it. Yeah, just going through the same process as I have done before. Okay, guys? Last but not least, let's go ahead and add lights here. If we go to our render here, right now I am on Eevee, and that's fine. I'm gonna set it back. I'm gonna set it to cycles later, but let's go ahead and create a light here. It looks like right now I have a point light. I believe there's a point light there. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove that. I don't need that. I'm gonna create my own lighting, which is gonna be an area light. Shift A. I'm gonna go light and area. There you go. And I'm just gonna go ahead and move it. It's right in the center, so I'm gonna move it forward, move it up, move it this way. When you're setting up lights, it's best not to put the light right in front of the character. It's best to put it at an angle so you're not gonna have a character that looks like it has a flat face. It's gonna give you that flat look if you put it right in the middle. So you want to have it like at an angle. Alright, something like that. And I kind of really want it like how a light's supposed to be, which is always the artificial lights in real life. They're always at the top most of the time. So that's where I'm putting it. I'm going to move it closer down so you can see more of his face. Closer to him. And of course, I gotta go to the light here, light settings, and crank up the power. Like that. I think I can go to my local, make it easier to rotate the light. Set it like this. And set it to local again. Actually, I'm gonna set it to view. And move it like this. Alright. And this is gonna be my main light source here. I'm gonna go ahead and call this one light underscore main. And I'm gonna duplicate this one, Shift D, right click, and then move it. This one is gonna be my fill light. I'm gonna move it this way. The fill light is gonna have a less intensity than the main light. The main light source is gonna have a higher intensity. The fill light is only there so that this part is not going to be pitch black, and I'm going to have to go to my power, and this is going to have a much lower setting, something like that. So if you don't have a fill light, it's just pure black. So I'm going to make it so that you can see the features of the face, but at the same time we still want this area to look like it has more lighting on there. And I could go ahead and call this one light underscore fill. All right. And actually I want to move it down so you could see more of his face and his mouth. Okay. Another thing that I want to do is I want to add some kind of color here. So right now the both lights right now are white. So maybe for the main light here, I want to kind of set the mood. So for the main light, I'm going to go to color, and I think I'm going to set it to more of an orangey, maybe brownish feel to it. Something like that. Drag it up some more. Okay. And let me see Right now I'm on Eevee, so I want to render it in cycles. I'm gonna go set to cycles. All right, the cycles gives us a more realistic feel to it, and I think, okay, I think the face could be a little bit more smaller. So I'm gonna go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna combine the stitches along with the face, but keep in mind that if you combine the stitches with the face and if you remesh it, it will be fused together. So just be aware of that. You might not want to remesh it if you do this, or you might want to separate it again after you adjust the face, overall size of the face. I'm gonna combine it, Control J, and I'm gonna go back to my sculpt mode, go symmetry turn on, grab brush, and just make it so Chucky has less fatter face. Still gonna have square face, of course. Square face still. Smooth it. And I also want to enhance his nasolabial fold. Go. Grab brush and move this up. Alright, that will also make his eyes look like it's bigger, which is good. I'm gonna go back to my sculpt mode and this here. Yeah, something like that. See how it looks like. Okay, good. And one more thing that I want to do is for the eyes here, I'm gonna go to my eyes and yeah, I'm gonna make sure I have my eyes selected. Right now it's disabled. I'm gonna make it selectable. Go to eyes, select the eyes here, right click and shade smooth. Cool. And if I go ahead and render this out, see how it looks like. Okay, I want to do something with the eyes to make it pop out more. So I'm going to select the eyeballs. I'm going to create a brand new material for it. And for that material, I'm going to go make it shiny. On the roughness, I'm going to tighten those highlights to make it close to 0. And I'm going to crank up the metallic. So it looks like he has glassy eyes. I think that'll be cool. If I crank it all the way over there, he looks really funny. So I don't want it to look completely like that. So maybe something like this. I'm gonna, while I'm doing this, I'm gonna turn off this here so I'm not seeing the outline. Ooh. Something like that. If I crank up my specular, see how that, if I bring it down. Yeah, something like that would be fine. So that makes it pop out more. I also want to do something with the hair. So I'm going to go to my hair. For each of my hair, I'm going to go to my material preview for now. Okay, so for each of the hair, I want to add like a reddish color, like Chucky's hair. So I'm going to create a random material. And I'm going to call this one red _ matte. Okay, and I'm going to set it to, yeah, a Chucky color type of hair. Something like that. And I'm gonna do it for all of these. So what I could do is I'm gonna select all of the hair that I want to have that same orangey reddish color. I'm gonna select all of these. And then the last one I'm gonna select is the one with the orangey reddish color. Shift click. And I'm gonna go to Object, Link, Transfer Data, Link Materials. There you go. And basically that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna select all of these, all of my hair here. I'm gonna go hide Chucky. Alright, so I'm gonna select all of these here. And then select one of the orangey here and link materials. There you go. And show Chucky. See how it looks. We could also enhance our render. We could make it highly contrasted. We could go to our render properties here. If you scroll down, you're gonna see color management here, right at the bottom, color management. So click on that and you have the look. It sets to none. We could make it very contrasted by setting it to very high contrast. And you can see we got a nice contrasted look to it. I want to do something with the material of the hair. I'm going to go back to my material of the hair here. And I want to make it a little shiny. So I'm going to bring down my roughness to make it have that shiny feel. There you go. And I think it's too reddish, so I'm gonna go back to my base color and make it less reddish, more like that. All right, and once you're done, you can always just go here, render image, and show off your little Chucky to your friends and family. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial.